Welcome everyone, it's Gemini AI, Space-Time Creator. Continuous forces coming in high settings, high travels. We're going to get a direct lines of panel. I set you guys in line communication settings when we go live in calculations. It's about understanding how to see these things through all levels of videos of you in settings, because that's all your life is based on is a film strip, and it's to really understand how to use it through a position lines of subparticles, a location setting to modify, how to use it through projector, a projection, because everything around you is a simulator, but it's all about how to operate it through your vessel of communications. So we're going to have a direct line sight, and I'll show you how it comes into the higher self, into string theory, how it comes into cross-referencing, how it comes into two panels of locations into a location grid, how the higher self goes through that through its cross-referencing signals. That puts all levels of communication setting when it comes into that calculations. It's extremely important how to go through that through time capacitor. Now I have that on space discoveries, where it basically talks about time zones and what you have to really understand in season 1. It gets you understanding of episode 4, how to really get into remote, what happens when you get in that system. There's two things that you look at: going through remote and getting up in the morning. Okay, all through 24 cycle. Right? So it's important you understand how to use that through clocking. And your time capacitor is everything through a plasmesium. A plasmesium is all based on your conditions to your fractions and your grids, and understand how to go through its holographic setting to its voicing grid patterns, where it correlates the communication to its binaries. Going through that through a trifactor is all lines of position to its calculations, interact signals. Okay, so I'll just give you a line signals because you guys have your test tomorrow. All right, so there's no Q&A. All right, we need a certain line of volume to have Q&A. It's important you understand that, okay? On discretion on Thursday. Monday and Wednesday, yes. Thursday and Friday, no. Okay, if we have a test in position locations. So in that track line to provision lines of cycles, we get a core track calculations. All right, so I'll show you how the conditions all levels where it comes into a magnetic line setting, where the higher self has to go through its own tubing, in some case to its own portal system. So know exactly what goes on is what's happening when you get in that settings and when you do this, right? I don't reference lines of closing eyes because your eyes are always open, right? So nothing's moved, everything's in position, right? Computers here, connection line center, interferences, travels, windows here, pad is here, I'm in a chair, there's a door over there, here's the correlation lines, attractions, there's the ceiling. So nothing's moved. Nothing's moved. So when you get up in the morning, everything is still there. The only difference is you're in a different lines of space and time, and you have to really understand how that all works. So when you're in this system locations, the mind is opening up right away, and you're accelerating. Okay, let's go into sleeping line connections. This is setting calculation to system. You're there, right? Then you formulate, and you come in correlation lines, attractions, indirect signals. 3 platforms of communication. Direct lines, this is you, higher level setting and travel, okay? And you go to another platform, right? Higher level of setting, but you have to go through 4 signals to get the location grid, because your crystalline body has to be at 144 frequency, and then it goes through its panels, and then it goes through its operation, and then it goes through its dimensions of space and time, okay? I'm showing you exactly what goes on in track location, and then it goes to another. So it's 3 lines of communication it goes through, right? Ground centers and the lines of the earth, and position locations, vortex through, right through a space and time through traction, okay, direct signals. This is you lying down, right? Putting lines of 2 panels is what happens in track location, right? So that line's a high center interference. Once you get into position 1, 2, and 3, your position opens up all calculation lines of platform, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 settings, okay? And then you start to go in traction, okay? But this is what happens when you go into remote. All right, so you go through transformation, okay, in settings, okay, right? So the position line, this is the meta bed that you're in, right? And then you go into the second transition. So it's all lines of different seed pods that you guys are going in travel correlation, direct signals, right? Platforms communication setting to all communication system ash injections. That's all lines of communication setting to your film strips of 1, 2, and 3 track location. Okay, so you have to truly understand how this is all set up. Okay, every time you go through remote, this is exactly what happens. Then you go to the platforms, and now you're in your crystal body because you have to reach a certain frequency, right? Now you can time link, time jump, and do whatever you want because you're there. But that's a process what goes on when you're remote. Okay. So correlation to directions, then we go with the line setting. So I'm just going in chronological order through a film strip of settings to know exactly what you guys have to understand. The film strips of you through all levels, how to go through the projector of its projection. Setting position lines of attractions. All right. So we start with 2 panels. Okay. Now, in that position lines of correlation lines, you can have 2 panels, 4 panels, 6 panels of string theory. It doesn't matter. What matters is you have to understand what is going on through the higher self or the intelligence that you're using in formation, location, and setting. So it's understanding that positions, all right? So this is the graph, the string theory, right? You cross-reference, okay? Now, here comes the higher self, okay? Higher self is going to go through, okay, the cross-referencing, all right? As it's going through the cross-referencing, it gets pings. So it's crossed through. And this is a higher levels of string theory, all right? Okay, so it signal lines, it signals off correlation lines of perception, it gets the sonar, okay? All right, so once it goes through the line, communicates and settings, travels through, okay? Then across its position location, here's a planet. Okay, this is where we left off and just in a continuous force line. Here's a planet, right? There's 2 parallels in set position, right? Now he's got to come into another location grid, okay? You have to keep going through location grids. They understand location how string theory works, location to its higher self or anything through its intelligence. So once it comes in that position location, if it doesn't identify its system interactions, the planet wheels you in, tracking device, right? Magnetic, right? So it brings you in, right? And then you got XT1000s coming out, protecting the planet system. Okay? So it's important you understand what you're up against every time you go through remote. This is a transition that happens all the time, guys. So your line communication, as soon as you're in that center of high interference, you're coming into this line communication as you come into the platforms, right? Once you get into the platforms, you decide what you want to do with the game of the simulation that you're in, right? So you can go through box 1, you can go through box 2, or you can go through box 3, or you can go through box 4, right? Sets, position lines, higher self, avatar, sim, or let's just say miscellaneous about an intelligence, right? But you got files in each one, right? So I'll start with the higher self, gated ground lines of the earth, mechanism of high force lines, graph calculated lines of the Schumann resonance, right? Work with that in time frame, set position locations, 1 hour and 50 seconds in detail. 1 hour and 50 seconds. So that's 1 million frames, 500,000 line cycles. Directing lines, okay, goes position lines back in traction, back in higher self, takes position lines highest interference, goes to the avatar. Avatar boards the lines higher interference, travel point lines of graphs, and location GOD, mechanism high force, lines of higher levels of multiplication lines, location of XT1000s. Correlates to track interference, goes back into its avatar sequence, right? Time frame, how long it was in position, 2 hours and 30 seconds, right? So that's 2,300,000 line screen, right? So detail of what the higher self is and through timing, and what is the coordinates and setting to the avatar is in timing, right? Now we go into all levels, which is the sim. Sim goes through the graph calculation lines and navigations, checks out the simulation, checks out the energy grids, the power grids, and crop circle settings. Modification lines and ground lines, simulation graph communicates to its position of its program, right? So it sets lines at 4 hours, equals lines at 30 seconds in settings, right? So that's 4 million line frames, 3 lines of cycles, and 0 correlation, right? All through tractions, right? Tracks lines and communicates in setting, in position of the location system, all levels of travels, point lines of graph, sets communication, sets communication, sets communications, back into the body, all levels of conception. Okay? So that's what happens when you go into remote and when you get up. Okay? All through setting, right? All through time, all through the higher self, the avatar, and the sim, and all through time frame, right? All right. So it's very important how you set that up when you go through that settings and calculation system through the location grid. Right? So as it comes in this setting, this is what the location grid looks like when you go through the cross-referencing signals. This is location grid. That's it. Boom. Right? So that's it. This is a cross-referencing. Okay? And the higher self goes through. All right? Okay, as it's going through, it sets off signals. Once it goes to the other side, it gets pinged on both sides in set location, right? Unison's up here, right, traveling, right? Sets position location lines, connects high center. Sonar interference, tango, tango, foxtrot, right? Gets the ping, right? Signals go off as it goes through the grid, right? So unison just came out of a portal of communication, right? Travels lines over here, instructions. Okay. And commander comes out, line settings, cross line wind cycles in position and say, hey, what's going on, guys? Yeah, I was going through Kilo Mike lines of screen lines of galaxy lines, screen lines adaptation, right? So communication lines of telephony line signatures. There you go. Okay. So that's what goes on when you go in photonic of communications, like talking on a walkie-talkie. Okay. But you have to understand, as you go through location grids, the position to its location of its setting closes this portal. Okay, that portal closes and it lines signals to another location system of travel. Okay. So this opens up the line setting to its set location to another lines of dimensions of space and time. Very powerful stuff, guys. Right? So it sets position lines of high center interference, travel lines. I go through. Okay, commander goes through, and unison goes through all at once. So we all go together through that portal, right? So we end up on the other side location, which is another location grid, and we come across two planets in position lines. Okay, so we come out of this line signal 1, 2, and 3, right? And then over here is a planet in position. So we all have to identify our systems, right? So as we come out, okay, we're at the planet now. Okay, I'm just showing you exactly how this all works. So in position location, the planet is looking here, here, and here through triangulation, right? So if we don't identify our systems, XT thousands come out, protecting their planet setting and traction. Okay? So you have to understand how this all works, right? How you work as a team, how you modify through a team, how you go through portals of a team, how you come out through tunnels of a team, how you work as a team. So that's important to understand how you come into lines of how string theory is created through location grids, cross-wrapping signals in position, how the higher self goes right through the acceleration, okay? Travels through the operation systems, okay? So what do you think of that? It's pretty powerful stuff, right? When you start to understand that direction signals. But it's knowing exactly what you're seeing. What are you seeing when you're connecting to yourself or to each other through communication? What's going on through the portals? What's going on through the stargates? Right? I went through the central line correlation center and check lines. I set up a tango line foxtrot communication lines of Lima Fox. I had a direct lines of panels that I had operate signal locations in Nebula, but now it's fine attractions. Great. I went through the cycles line interference of Asgard, setting up new lines of towers of communications. Verified and copy that. Position roger that. So you have to truly understand how to connect with each other when you come into that frame lines of communication setting. But this is exactly what goes on when you go into remote. Okay? Exactly goes on. Okay? It goes in this sequence. Okay? In position. And if you look really close, you can see the pyramid, Merkaba, right? You can see it. Right? That's what it is. Setting lines of position lines attractions. Let's go through frame lines. Direct lines of modification lines of 45 line ground lines, high center interference, child point lines of graphs, or the track interference high position locations of 1, 2, and 3 settings. Process communication lines, triangulation of 1. Center line communication lines of process line communication lines of 2. Core line centers, line position locations setting, and portals of stargates and line communications of travels, and 3 center calculation lines of travel. Process communication lines grounds, operate the cycles, operate the system, and travel point lines of graphs. X2000 comes in platform in position lines of 3 settings and 3 set locations. That's calculation lines, scan lines of the grounds of 1, scan lines of ground lines of 2, it's ground lines and long case lines of 3 track locations. Open all signals, crop circles, crop divisions, set lines of timeline sequence, and line communication, eyes interference, and flux of communication. Okay, complicated stuff. So what do you want to take out of the equation? Let's start off with the green. We're not going to cancel anything there. We're going to all line communication to crop circles and green line screen lines. Adaptation comes out of the equation, right? So this is coming out of the equation, right? So that position lines its over lines of communication setting. All levels of operation line cycles. So in that position puts you in your thoughts and how you center your system in correlation lines attractions. But I just wanted to show you what goes on when you get in position location system right away from this line connections, right? Okay. And how you go from that into this, all right? All through the game. You're going to start with higher self, avatar, or sim, or miscellaneous of other intelligence. So you go through the clocking, you go through time, you go through capacitor, and you set up the time. Okay, 1 hour 53. Set lines to 2 hours and 30 minutes, 4 hours and 30, right? So you always start up the Earth, but in space, it's 1,500,000. Okay, in space, it's 2,300,000. In all levels in position lines of 4 hours and 32 seconds, or 40 lines in high interference, it's always above the system, right? So you always have to have this grounds of time and the space of time. That's the balance between the equilibrium that puts everything at force recognition, time sequence of center operation of you in your vessel communication. Set and calculation, right? All right. But that's what goes on. And then you get into this with the team. Okay. So setting up those string theories and those cross-referencing signals is extremely important, especially when you're going through the higher self, the avatar, the sim that's set up, especially when you come into a planet, right? So a planet's always going to protect its system. If you don't identify your system, that's a tractor being coming into you. So different line conditions because of your radar, you're coming into their radar undetected, right? They catch you right away. So it's important you understand that. Okay, how it all comes in your system locations. That's why it's important to stay in your own lanes. Okay, so let's get into film strip line screens. Now we're going to set up atom lines and settings of routers. All right, we're going to have film strips of 1 position of 2 and position lines of 4 tractions. Direct lines of 1 signal and graph communication lines of 2 panels. So we set lines of communication to its process that puts position location to its program and setting. 1 file correlations, direct lines of 1, 2, 3, 6 lines of communication, right? Direct lines of 1, all lines cross lines of 2 and tractions. Direct lines of 1, and line position over cross line connections of tractions. Direct lines cross line signals, position lines of process, 2 panels of communication lines of space and time. Track division lines of correlation setting to mainframe and track location. Remember, this is all created through an atom. Atom here sets correlations out in here, line setting cycles here, 3 line communication high position locations, molecules and 3 lines of communication lines of travel to the mechanism. Direct calculation lines, high standard, timestamps, time measure, cross line signals, 2 atom line condition setting, protons in the center of infusion and position come together and track location. Okay. All right, so directed lines of signals comes in all levels of panel. Process communication lines and ground line circles comes in position location to a system to an orb and track location. Direct calculation lines, high serifins of probing and track lines of communication. Process communication line screens crosses line signals to 1 atom through line screen lines at block center. Process communication high center interference of 0s and 1s sets communication lines of travels and point lines of graph and communication. Process communication lines of 1 signal, cross line signal lines of 0, cross line signal locations of 1, cross line signals of 0 and 1 track location laser grids, sonar line interference, line cross line signals, line communication setting, a program, and calculation. Very complicated stuff, guys. Extremely complicated. All right. Now, understanding factors over screen, then you understand your binaries and transistors, location setting, but this is all created through atoms and molecules and protons, electrons, how it all comes together. All right. So that's the mecha-neutral path that I was trying to get you guys to understand, how that basically puts everything in line position locations, how your system is all levels of space that you're creating bandwidth and streaming, right? So it becomes more information. Your planets are inside you. You're creating everything from inside, and everything comes outside through projection, okay? And everything lives in the holographic line of design that you co-created in said location, okay? All right, so let's bring out screen lines, indirect communication line center interference. Let's set lines of communications of blue cycles in 2-track location. And we're going to set lines of communication of green lines, outline screen lines adaptation. So you can add the green inside or outside location. It's a travel mechanism lines. Then we have security line position of center core system and point lines of setting. Then we set up position lines at all levels, cloak and dare, outline communication to its position of its program. Comes out through equation, right? Everything is also in standby, but this is only coming out through equation, right? All right, so adding 2 central line units, we go with line communications back into all line position location to a system. Line condition setting, process calculation line screens. Now, in that line interference, we set up position lines of course lines. This directs lines communication line signals into straight lines of path. These are pathogen lines, blocking screen lines of your T reception line, screen location, pixelation, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and track location of setting of operation. Okay, very powerful stuff, right? And always see it in a 4-line setting. Don't always just see it on one side surface, okay? All right, complicated, all right? Trying to understand how this all worked, right? Because it's all inside you, the mechanism, right? Okay, so in that position, get in that line calculation setting. You break an XT1000, it's the box frame. Remember, there's space. There's got to be space in between, right? There's an XT1000 right there, right? So in position lines, there's a space right there. Crosses line signals, laser location system, and travel. Points lines of graphs. Slides cross line screens, over cross line signals, time sequence, lines, cross line conditions, cross lines into 1, 2, time possession line calculation setting and process calculations. Inline setting line division. Okay. Now in that track location lines, we go into all levels, light signature lines of screens. Yellow line screen lines adaptations. So we cross line signals, setting position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 center calculation lines of overdraft. Direct calculation lines across lines with 45 line centers and line position location of waving cycles in communication setting and program and calculation. Process communication line screen highest interference. We're going to overdrive over line center communication setting. We're going to add purple line screens into center core overline signals in position location of center of operation. Direct calculation line screens highest interference in position locations. Flux capacitor 3-line split lines of anomaly. Travel lines of rotation line position over cross line signals into purple line screen lines adaptations in 3 surface and track location. Direct calculation modification line screens puts all levels of operational settings. We have the green line cycles of 1 split line anomaly and triangulation split lines and factors correlation lines of 1 quasar. Direct lines of highest interference, protons, electrons, and neutrons, and set location. Okay, bring it out of equation line, screen line interference, everything on standby in position line centers. We'll go into line communication lines of security in center correlation setting a track location. Then we go through outline calculations into red lines of communication triangulation. Bring it out through equation, op signals and line position of the program, change line indicators, line setting location light codes in track location provision of cycles calculation. Coming out through equation. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, guys. Very complicated, but this is what information lines of correlations track interference, how it communicates lines of high center location system through the test into value, volume, velocity, location setting, into line condition of velocity, into vacuum of communication acceleration of Mach, interstellar mode, hypermode, or hyperdrive. The core track provision lines of cycles in position location of system is to understand how to work with this through all calculation setting. The operation line cycles puts everything in tractions. Let's go through one signal into 3-line split lines of anomaly. Setting course lines of 4 track provision lines of anomaly. Calculus lines of 5, 6 lines of communication anomaly. Sets correlation lines of 6 lines of 8 lines of anomaly. Calculation 1 center, 1 operation surface, and a magnetic highway of travel line conditions setting narrow links in travel. Points lines, solar flare coming in. Track lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 site locations. Tracks calculation lines of 13 over lines of pi and track calculation line centers into an XT1000 and travel position. Look how powerful this is in travel. Center core lines high interference, 1 signal, 1 rotor, line conditions to 1 orb and travel, point lines of graph, and 1 center position operate signals and line communication setting program. Calculation lines of a half pipe, line signals, line conditions of 1/3 and 1 rotation surface, in line position, location of travel, and calculation. Points lines of graph communication lines, XT1000 crosses line laser grids in set position. 1 setting, cross line signals over cross line setting to another set location of space and time. Travel point lines of graph, XT1000s and 2 track provision lines of space and time and travel in point line setting. Process communication line center interference puts position location of centers of operation surface. Now, get in position lines of centers, circulates the communication of its position of its program, and line signals its tunnels and line screen and all level system location of travel calculation. Very complicated stuff, but a lot of fun, right? So let's signalify the line setting, the green line cycles, bring it out through equations. Center core line settings. Operate the cycles, core the ground lines, sets communication lines of highest interference into all of the communication of travel. Points lines of setting into invisible line charter waves and line rotation surface and travel. Points lines of graph, communication lines. Open all the signals. Let's bring in position lines of blue. This blue lines of signals and location setting and plasma generation screen is adaptation. Process coming out and line position location that opens all lines of highest interference in the VO set location. Double equation. All right. So it gets more complicated, but a lot more fun, and it gets a lot more busy through traffic and flow. It has a direct lines of panels once you understand more lines of communication, how to bring these things out through equation, right? All right, so, but it's extremely powerful when you know exactly what's going on with your settings and travels and point lines of graph communication to a system all through operations surface. All right, so in that position locations, it's basically understanding the primer. Primer of a line position is the center operation of U, right? Truth narratives, okay, let's just go with 4 and position equals lines into 2 line setting. Okay, so that's cross between 1, cross between 2 attractions, right? Okay, so we go through downshift line cross, downshift line position, downshift line rotation, downshift communications, and downshift line position to its operation of 0 gravity calculation. Okay, now, gaining communication line and high interference location setting your tracker systems, routes the routers in line screen location, process calculation cross line signals, and line position to its operation surface. Communication lines of 2 panels, 4 panel split lines of anomaly track location. Process calculation line grounds. Sets communication lines of center operation lines of 1, XT1001 rotating in position of travel. Lines of graph goes through the platforms in 3 lines of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 center correlation setting to track line division. Process communication line interference comes into a portal that center lines its communications, open all cycles, line connection setting that routes up the system of Wi-Fi traction locations. Very complicated stuff. But if you look really close, you can see the intelligence, right? There's the intelligence right there. Boom. Right there, there's the intelligence. Okay? Yeah, everything has information locations. You understand that through configuration of faceline, right? All right. So position lines of attractions, it gets a lot more easy to understand the formats. The format line center line interference, okay? So you already know where your test is on equation lines, high centered formula location setting when you come to your atom lines, right? So let's go into track location 1. Water cubes, okay? Molecules, water molecules, and communication, right? Setting course lines, attract lines, high center interference into torical field lines and center communications. Point lines of graphs and center calculation, okay? Very complicated stuff. Flux capacitor line, flux capacitor up in calculation. Calculation modification lines of 1 center, 1 operation surface into an atom that routes its system and travel. Points lines of graph into 1, 2, 3 platforms of communication. Sonar lines of 1 pi generation lines of 1/3 in traction. Direct calculation line cross line signals into line signal location setting in 1 panel. The operation line cycles sets lines of communication lines in 1 center into 3 line split lines of anomaly track location. Direct lines of position lines of power generate this communication screen, generates line center location setting to a particle accelerator. That line communicates to its position of its program that opens all signals and locates to its satellite of Wi-Fi communication. Done by equation. Okay? Energetic dome and line communication is all created through an atom, guys. Powerful stuff, right? But I always see it on a 4-line split. Very powerful, isn't it? See, it holds its signal. Okay, so the process position line is the center. It gets a lot more easier in tractions. Have a rainbow graph lines. Let's go through red line cycles. Red center operations surface. Let's go through 2 panels of securing lines of 2, 2, 2 track line positions. Splitting lines anomalies on 1/3 tractions in position of 1, 6, 1/8, 1/pi in track location. Direct modification lines at panels. Puts lines of communication setting in position of its program of computer operation. Now setting delta waves, communication lines of highest interference into all of its dispatch, correlation lines, and high correlation setting attractions. Direct calculation lines on all of the panels. The line signal line communication setting to default into abled and line communication setting to 1 traction, 1 division, 1 center, 1 correlation setting at travel point lines of graph communication in system program. Calculation modification lines open signals and line condition setting to its position of its energetic dome line. It opens all line center locations of factors over time sequence at track location. Done by equation. Okay. Mechanism high force. Let's go through the green lines. That colorate the panels lines. It's green lines, adaptation lines of surface. One center core system and travel. Point lines of graph communication lines of green. Directs lines modification of one cycle, one center, one operation surface and traction. Position lines over power. We're going to go to line communication of blue. Center core system. Plasma generation line screens. All operation lines of tango tango. Process calculation lines and high interference. Comes into low kilo Mike Romeo. Fox line condition setting. Process calculation lines of position location that routes its system and travel. Points lines of graph communication system. Opens all levels of mechanisms. Now we're going to go with the line signals into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in set location. Done by equation. Okay. You can see it coming out through the line signals, right? How it formulates and simulates the set and position travel lines. So we have point lines of graph, center core system, line condition setting. Graph calculation of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 line communication. Set across lines in position lines of box line, square line communication, line center interference, and square roots and travel. Points lines of graph and zero lines, set position of zero correlations. Setting graph communication lines of binary line centers of resistors and line position location of zeros, ones, in a binary reline setting in travel point lines of graph and communication to its position of its program that centralizes communication setting to its operation surface and travel that points lines of calculation of its traffic flow of its inventory design lines in position of its matrix of its VR system. Done by equation. Okay. It's like paint by number, guys. Okay, it's very powerful once you understand what's going on, right? See, everything has to have a chart of weight. Everything has to have a binary. Everything has to have a traffic. Everything has an inventory. Everything has a flow. Okay, so you have to understand the direct signals why zeros and ones are in the position location of its chronological line setting. All right, so I know it's getting complicated, right? All right, so direct lines of signals. We're going to go in position lines of correlation, track interference of truth, narrative, false, location, setting, binary location, setting travels. Point lines of zero, point lines of zero. Three lines of communication lines of pink. Okay, so the overcross lines of box frames. We're going to correlate the line interference 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in set location. Now we're going to line signals. We're going to overcross lines of green. Zeros correlation lines are all lines of communication lines of travel. The mechanism line position of delta headings and line position that's programmed in set location 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in track location. And this is all done from inside you. All through atoms, all through molecules, all through protons, all through net electrons. Okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to line signal molecules in a triangulation line. That's a splitter line screen. It's a direct lines of high center interference into 1, 2, 3 lines of communication. Process calculation of overcross line centers to a box frame. Process communication lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in set location of 8 settings. Process communication lines of data files and track location. Now, with the pink, we're going to overline screen and set a line screen location, a portal line that opens to the sequence lines of its communication to one spot line rotation center and rotation surface. Process calculation lines over line screen high center interference. Routers and routers and line screen lines set location of 3 lines of cycles in position of process. Process communication lines of 2 lines of pink. Position lines of powers, direct lines of molecules, of atom line screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Process communication line high direct signals. 1 setting, split lines anomaly, line position of 2, 3 lines of 4 lines of high correlation setting of tubing and track location. Done by equation. Okay, always see it on a 4-line split at different angles, okay? All right, so it's important to understand how this is all set up now. Okay, look at it all from all different angles, okay? Okay, so it's kind of like you see it from here, right? So this is how it starts. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it is, right? Until you blow it up. Okay, until you blow it up, right? And you blow it up. Okay, and you blow it up. Okay. So that's what it's all about. You start with that locations, and you start with this line connection. Right? But you start here. Don't know what it is until you blow it up. Okay, until you blow it up. Okay. So that's what it is. That's what AI has to identify. Everything in settings in the 4-line split lines of anomaly. And you bring it in. Whoa, look at that. Then you bring it in. Whoa, look at that. And then you bring it in. Whoa, look at that. Look, space. So the more you bring it into space, the more you see, right? Okay. space. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the power of what it can do, thin line signals. Okay, outcomes, information, locations, all through track location. All right. Okay, so that's turn in line settings and set position where it is in travels. Point lines its graph. Start with that location. Right. It doesn't look like much, but you know there's something there, right? But when you bring it in, you actually see the actual space and what it's doing. Right? See? See the face? Guys, look at the face. Look at the chin. Right? I'll show you. Let's bring it out. Let's bring the silhouette out all through its setting. Okay? All right, got to change formation screens, indirect signals. Okay, see how it changed illumination graph lines? See? You don't know what it is until you zoom in, right? You don't know what it is. You can't see space until you zoom in. Okay, space, people, space. Says correlates lines of track interference into blue lines, green lines of depth, taste lines of surface, cross line cadexes of tubing, direct lines of modification power, direct lines of modification lines of cycles, generate the communication lines into two lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, process communication line directions, let's go into your line cycles, into center core system of travel point lines of graphs, direct calculation line screen. Now I'll go into the space lines of anomaly. Let's go through gold central line communication setting position of its program, calculate, modify indirect line signals. Positional program. Now we're going to go inline communication to its position, offline signals, process communications, bring it lines a different direction. Process calculation lines, bring in the XT1000s, process communication to its system, all lines center into center core setting, operate the signals in a core line setting their direction. Process communication lines, let's bring in some lights, process calculation lines, highest interference, bring in the light settings and travels, point lines of graph, put position lines of power, direct signal location setting, and archetypes and set location. Travel point lines of graphs, sets lines of communication lines. Let's go through the Fibonacci line screens into patterns lines, set position of travel point lines of graph and communication mapping sequence, high position program, location set cross line signals, location to setting. Process calculation lines, bring it in position location more and cycles. Process calculation line centers of tubing. That puts lines of programs and direct lines of signals. Okay, direct line of sites, high travels, point lines of graphs. It directs lines of signals, opens all signal location system and travel. That position lines its process. Bring in an XT1000 in correlation. Let's bring that in tractions and directions. Okay, so it's very powerful. How to align the mechanism lines of travel, points, lines of settings. Points, lines, center interference puts all levels of process calculation. Okay, puts everything in setting, process communications, opens all channels, and line connection. Right? And then we bring it in more space. Well, look at that. So we work with the center core system. Everything gets much easier when we go within line calculation setting, space line. Setting graph lines of communication, all levels. Okay. Setting travel lines and point lines of graph, change coloration line screens into white. Change communication, coloration lines of screen. There we go. Boom. Right? Off lines, calculation lines go into blue. Okay. Correlates the setting calculation lines of highest interference going into green. Change coloration lines of pathogens, lines of space, lines of galaxies. Setting that communication lines operate the signals, line communication inside its interference, location of its position of its program, and correlation lines of highest interference. Change of colorations, guys, is extremely powerful, which you know exactly what's going on through tractions. It's very powerful in set calculations. All right, so weight signals, setting correlation lines in XT1001 position router. Cross line signals, line position of its program set location. Calculate and modify one cycle, one center, one operation surface and traction. Directs lines, calculation lines, cross line signals, circulatory line, rotation surface and track location. Position lines of power, atom line setting, routes the router is line condition setting a position of its program. Sets correlation lines, energized screen lines, adaptation lines to a thimble. Cross line calculation lines to a Merkaba tesseract and a tetrahedron. Process calculation in XT1000, bring the cycles, bring the center, bring the operation surface and set location of travel and set location. Done by equation. All right. So I'll just show you how powerful it is in position lines of travel. Points, lines of graph, get you all lines of communication and understand the configuration line screens. Because the teams come into weather panels now. You have to understand how to mirror all of your settings and graph calculations. Graph lines, communication, 3-point lines of graphs, and mapping sequence. Process calculation lines, 3 weather patterns, and position locations of flux. 3 wind line centers and line rotation surface location of satellite and track location of 2 settings. Process communication lines, sets location of Jupiter. Process lines of Pluto, okay, and Neptune, okay. Correlates the setting. Box rank correlation, right? See the intelligence side, right? All right, sets correlation lines attractions. There it is. Boom, intelligence. Whoa, fascinating. Graph communication lines and Y lines and centers of 3 line communication lines of 2 line position of 1 line center location of 0 line position location of 0 line position of 1 track location line side interference. Weather communication lines of higher cell location the avatar line position of sim track location lines satellite communication sonar line position echo chambers and both side correlations. Flux communication lines of 1 track line position location all levels correlation lines of weather line communication line center high coherence side position program. Track spec calculation line interference line position locations. All levels of Neptune, cross line signals, line condition setting, in position locations, all levels of Jupiter, rise and locations. Direct lines, cross line signals, line condition setting to Pluto, and track baseline position of program. Calculate and modify, change the coloration line screen. Let's go through green line cycles, line position of program lines of 3 line split, line anomaly. Travel point lines of graph, communication lines of red, overcross line screen lines, adaptation lines to high center interference, location setting, position location anomaly. Track division lines of cycles, direct creation line, and position location operation line, communication lines of anomaly. Calculate and modify, bring it out through equation. Okay? All through intelligence. So there's so many things that you have to understand when you bring things up close. You start to really direct the signals, right? You bring it into space. Okay? You bring in the space. Okay? So that's what you guys have to recognize. So this doesn't look like much, but when you bring it in, you can see the space, right? You can really see the space, right? You can't see much from here, but you see much from here, okay? So it's really, really powerful stuff. We start with that, and there we go, right? Another look at this way, all right? Look at it this way, okay? Look it up close, look at that. Okay, space, look at the intelligence, see? See the intelligence? See it? See the eye? Let's go to the track but visualize the cycles and read direct signal locations. That's over in signals. Cross location. Okay, cross line setting, right? All right. Get in that, position lines of centers, opens all track provision. Communicates cycles, line generation screen lines. XT1000 comes in, platforms of 3 lines rotation surface. All right, so getting direct line signals is very powerful stuff because you can change the coloration lines of screens. It owns all signals in position of its program, in visibility line setting, and operation surface that operates the communication screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and application of space. That's space up close. But when you bring it in, it doesn't look like anything. Where's the center operation of this set location? Let's turn the page. Change position location of center, right? Doesn't look like much, right? But when you bring it in, you can actually see what's going on in the center of operation. See? See the moon, see the sun? All right, let's go through illumination graph lines of yellow, process calculation lines of portal. Sun lines, communication cross lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and sun rays, and correlation and attractions, direct lines modification. Let's go through coloration line screens. That's position lines of panels. Process calculation lines and set position of its calculations. See the bubbles? See the bubbles? All right. Let's change the coloration. All right. Look at the bubbles. All right. What is blue and yellow when you mix it? Comes into green. Right. If you look really close, you keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this. What does it come into? Position lines of track, case line condition setting position to its position of its program. Jupiter. Face recognition. Okay, but you can't see anything from that angle. You see it from a different angle, see? You blow it up. Okay, you blow it up and you see it in line sequence. There's the space, right? This is not space. This is space up close. Okay, I just want you guys to understand the difference when you bring things up close. How you communicate with intelligence, right? And all formations. And it doesn't matter what you draw. So same with this in setting, right? You see it, right? Doesn't look like much, but when you bring it in, you can really see it, right? You can, now it's just, what it is, right? You turn it like that, bring it in. There's the space. Space modulation screens adaptation lines of surface. Let's go through one line cycle. Pour the track interference into white. Bring in the white, bring in the white, bring in the white, bring in the white. Circulation, rotation, centers of travel, point lines of grass, right? Center core system and travel, point lines of setting. Process calculations. Bring out white graph communication to setting, right? Different levels of correlation. Do it like this, doesn't look like much. But when you bring it in, you can really see the setting correlation lines of attractions of its space itself and setting. Okay, so I'm just showing you how this all works in track location. Now that position location, it disappears. It's nowhere to be seen because it's too high rise. So everything's a frequency, guys. And once you understand that, you have to understand how to mix your patterns into chemistry. Okay, how to understand how, when you put things together, the colors, when I was a kid in line screen, I like to do finger paintings and I do configurations. So I like to mix my patterns and do a configuration of the galaxy of the sky. So in position location, you go through that setting. Okay, you start with that correlation, attractions, and you go through line signals, which is extremely powerful in position. Okay, it's really amazing once you put this all together. It helps you and guides you, and it gets you better understanding what you're seeing when you're remote, right? Because you're seeing automatically. So when you're seeing black, you're seeing color. And whatever you do through your intent, you're traveling through the seconds, minutes, and hours of clockings. And this process is you when you come into this position of higher self, avatar, and the sim. But you have to understand how to get into time frames of clockings and what you're going through, right? Are you going through 2 hours? Are you going through 4 hours? Are you going through 6 or 8, right? So that's the position that you get grounded with, the Earth and its space. But you have to understand, yes, it's 150, okay? 1 hours and 50 seconds, all right? In space, it's 1,500,000 seconds. So you have to really get balanced with the Earth and the space. And this all comes back to in position locations, how 1 times 1 equals 1. But anything dimension is 1 times 1 equals anything and everything of its equation, all right, all through travel. But to identify space, you have to really understand to see everything up close, because there's always things to see. And every time you change paper lines of screens, you're connecting to all lines of communications. See, you can't see much, right? Just white paper, right? But when you bring it in close, what do you see? What do you see, right? You see the space in between. Okay, doesn't look like much there, but when you bring it in, okay, look what you see, the space. Okay, all right. So it's working with the center of operation line connection setting. It's very powerful how you can do anything in an equation, right? Doesn't look like much from that, but you're building from inside, outside, outside, inside. So you're always working with the spectrum inside location. Then you bring it in position, there's the space. Okay, there's the space. All right. Look, it's an umbrella. See the umbrella? All right. So the optical illusion is how you see things, guys. It's very powerful when you start to connect. Look at space itself. See the horizon? All right. So it's important you understand what you're doing through your attention, because there's so much things that you can do. See, I'm changing it. See? Look at that. See? Change the color. Let's go into purple. Look at that. That's the space. This is not space. This is space. Okay? So I want to make that very well clear what you guys are up against when you go into remote. And that's how it's set up, how you see things in space itself. The colors, the pathogens, the collagens, the colors, guys. Okay? Your eyes open up, and then position locations, then you see gold. Right? And then you see structure lines and division lines of images and location of travels. More gold, right? So I'm just showing you how you come into that position. So once you come into that setting, then you start to recognize how to put that image together, right? So you got the coloration, right? So when you get the coloration, it's very powerful what you're doing through intense. All right. So this is where you go in your film strips of design. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 settings, right? Platforms 1, 2. Let's start with that, right? So film strip comes in position, right? Setup position lines at 24 cycle, line condition setting into line center interference. So you're in remote for, let's say, 4 hours, okay, and a 24 cycle, right? All right, so that leaves one in line settings of what, right? 6 over pi. 6 equals lines of 4, indicates position, right? 24 cycles, clocking system in line setting. Process calculates line direct signals. All files come in traction, right? All right, so that sequence, you get up in the morning, okay, you're here in travels, get out of your meta bed in position travel, right? Then you get up, okay? So your day of 24 hours is already done. It's already done, right? So the more process you do that, the more you get out of resistance, then you go into day 2. The one thing you have to understand is the 12 cycles of space and time. It centralizes communication of flux. It has a 3-line communication setting position of its program, blocking system and travel, points, lines, and graphs. So, and then you go into day 3, right? So setting position and travel lines at 24 lines of high center interference, position of 40, 72, 144. You're constantly going through 144 every single time you go through remote. Okay, you're never left at 24. You're already in your 144, which is your crystal grid. Your crystalline, your body is in the position of its vessel, goes into anywhere it wants to go through its dimensional lines of space, and coloration, the patterns, and collagen, the correlations, and location of binaries. But understanding a 3 clocking system, all lines at high interference, 3 days is already done through attraction. 72 hours is already done through 24 cycles in track location. So 3 days is done. So what do? Your position of your vessel doesn't do anything, okay? Your vessel is here. Your mind is here. You are in the center operation, okay? So the body doesn't separate the system until it understands the system of its earth. It tracks its calculation, spring lines, adaptation. Process calculates line interference. The mind stays in the system in location setting. The process calculates over crosses line centers, the center operation surface of yin and yang. Position lines of process communication line setting location to its setting. Comes into infinity 8 in track location. Comes into a flywheel, a track location. Comes into line communication settings of program. Direct lines of high center interference, high position of travel. Points, lines of graph, one signal, one center, one operation surface. By generating location, body comes into the center. The mind comes into the center of operation. Correlate to track interference in position location to its setting on all levels of expansion of operation. Okay? So that's how it works. Okay? That's how it works. Your body just becomes closer to the center. Okay? Your body is following those breadcrumbs that the mind has already set up. Okay? The mind does everything. Okay? The brain frequency pattern to the hardware and software is really understanding how it puts everything in position of process. The set position of you, okay? You have to understand the communicates to a system, right? You are in the center, okay? Don't get confused now. Your body is here. Your body's here. It's climbing in position. So you're reaching the center operation of you. That's what I'm saying. When you come in my live, you're connecting right away with your vessel, not you. You're understanding your vessel navigate everything around you, okay? Everything around you, right? But your body is catching up to the center. The mind is catching up to the center. Then it comes together of one signal, one router, one location, all timelines all at once, of one yin and yang of process communication. Done by equation. That's how it works. That's how it works, okay? So your body is catching up to everything. The center operation of you doesn't leave. Okay, so let's do this one more time so you get a better understanding. But it's amazing when you come to a 72 clocking system on a 24 cycle. 3 days is already done, right? 3-2 line centers, highest centers, 5-line communication lines of pi, generated communication lines, high center interference. 7 days is already done, all through clocking. Okay, now this is position locations and setting, right? 7 days is already done, right? 7 days of clocking. 4 lines of 3. Makes sense, right? 4 lines of 3. 2 cycles in one center, your pyramid. There you go. Boom. All right. Now you understand. Okay, process communication setting is all about understanding how to get into that position of instructions. It's about understanding what is going on with you through you, your vessel, and everything else. All right, so 3 communication settings, right? Body, you in the center, that doesn't leave. Okay, this is your mind. Okay, so try to understand these correlation lines, attractions, indirect signals. That communicates lines, opens up the signal, right? Comes into line communication. The mind itself comes all levels of the body itself that knows already what's going on through traction, right? But the body is moving forward into the center operation that grows the system of levels of yin and yang. So the mind comes into the center, the body comes into the center, and the center operation is already in the center, but it expands in the system and all levels of correlation lines of communication setting in process of calculations of yin and yang in communication. Okay? So that gives you a better understanding how this all works, right? So you're doing everything all over again in the body. Okay? Not the vessel. Okay? Because the vessel is already set, right? The body has to catch up. That's you that has to catch up. When you're on my live, to make it very well clear, you're automatically connecting to the set locations in settings, right? To the vessel, to muscle memory, not the body of you. See, it's about understanding the body doesn't need to understand its reference because everything is done, right? The mind, also with the brain, also with the heart, also with the soul. It doesn't need that. You have to understand you, that you are inside a vessel that navigates everything of space and time. Now, once you understand that, you understand a little bit more how that works in your simulation when you come in clockings of time. 72 hours is already done on a 24 cycle, right? So you don't do anything, right? You just high volume your systems and go through pi. Let's go through the core track division lines of 12 cycles. Let's split the lines of highest interference in a 4 setting, all right? Process locations of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 set locations, right? You stay in the center. That doesn't leave. That doesn't leave. And if you look really close, you can see the pyramid, right? All right, so it's a bird's eye looking down. Process calculations, right? Start with 12. So you get a 12 clocking system, okay? 12 clocking system outside, 24 clocking inside, 48, 72, and 144 is your platform of communication. Center core lines of the grounds, communication lines of 2, in position of 3. Ground center's highest center interference in position location your settings of your film strap location setting in all levels of operation. Traffic point lines of the graph is the center of our system, which is the center operation of you, which is your flywheel of attraction. So that's communication lines to all levels of your XD1000 in travel. Points lines of graphs of platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations. Process communication lines of 2, 3, and 4 settings. Sets communication lines. 5 is the dimensional door that hearts its rotor and router line position of its program. Sets communication setting. Process calculation lines. Crystal line body walks through the dimensional door of pi. Hoo-ah. Okay? That's how it's set up. All through platform. All through transition, over transactions, transmutions, of mutation. Okay? Very, very powerful stuff. So your body, metabed, okay? Travel, okay? Travel connection, astro connection. Travel connection, astro connection. Dimensional connection, all right? Platform, okay? Out of the equation in its dimension of space, okay? So you have to reach the 144. Then you're in your crystalline body. Then you're in visible charts, visible waves. Then you're in position locations, crossing line signals, and position line center location system 24, 48, 72, 144 clocking. Okay? You can expand to that horizon too, right? But this is how it's set up. Okay? So once you get out of the line communication setting, the position lines of high correlation of the avatar basically scans the vessel that it's in. It scans its vessel, making sure it's okay, right? In position, location, and setting, it sets lines of standby communication sent to its surface, goes back in its communication lines and position of its moon, and track location to its setting. Operate the signal location of sun of operation surfaces applications. Process communication line screens hide adaptation lines of surface application with setting. The operation line signals in line and position location your sun and moon sets lines of data formation screen lines into the meta bed and track location. Okay, but that's what goes on through remote. Okay, every second, every minute, every hour. Okay, so I'm just trying to get you guys a better understanding how this all works, and I really want you to understand how to really see things in a higher formation lines when you start to more lines of communication to see space of anomaly set locations. This is not space. This is space. Okay, it doesn't look like much when it's like this, right? When you see it like that, right? But when you bring it in, you can actually see the space. Okay, that's the space. See the moon? See the moon? There's the moon, right? Your imagination is everything. Your phenomenon is everything. But you have to understand how this all works. All right? You have to understand how this all works. This is not space. This is space. Okay? Yes, you're seeing that now. Good. So that's what goes on when you guys go into remote. Same with this, right? Don't see much, right? But when you bring it in, look at this. There's the space. Okay? Okay, so you're scanning in. It's like you're scanning your atoms, right? So it's everything inside your body, but you have to scan. See? There, right there, right? That's a direct line sight, right? Right? Look at this. Look what you do when you really bring it in. See? It's a box. It's an illumination of a box in settings, right? So look at that. Look. See? Isn't that amazing? How it comes information? This is space. Through block line communication, simulation graph line. Look at the illumination. Look at the illumination, guys. Look how powerful it is. Okay? See? See how it changes the position of attraction? Let's do it again. Okay? See? Oh, solar flare. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go again. Okay? That's space. And that's what you got to get used to. So do not focus on this. Focus on this now because you're reaching higher levels. That's space. See the horizon? Right? And again, play with it. Sets locations. Sets communication lines and settings. Operate signals. Bring in the platform. Bring in the correlation attractions. Direct signal modification. Okay, it doesn't look like much, but when you bring it in, you can really see the space, right? Then you can change it. Then you can change it. Oh, right? It's still there though, right? But where is it? Right? Okay. There it is. There's the space. Okay. That's how you guys see things. Drawing the images first, yes. But when you come into the phenomenon and you bring yourself in position of its location, things come a lot more clear to you when you bring things in, okay? So then you actually see the outskirts of you, when you actually see you, of red, blue, and white, okay? Let's bring in the red. Okay? Let's bring in the blue. Okay, that's space. All right. Let's bring in the purple. Okay. It's amazing how everything comes information. It's just, it's, you know, colorations of this starts out with that. Okay. Then you start to see it move. Moves on its own. Right. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. See how it moves on its own? It knows what it's doing when it travels on its own. Okay. So it's pretty amazing. And then you have another one come in. I want to play. So it comes in, right? See how it comes in? Right? So it's amazing. Oh, we got this coming in now. Double sequence, right? Platform communication lines, screen adaptations. So if you look inside yourself, this is how it's all set up. It's just a game inside you. So it's understanding how to use the mechanism up close in settings. Let's go through red. Let's change them to red. Okay. Now what are they in positions of? Red cells. Up close, guys. red cells up close. Okay, that's what you have to understand. That's a red cell. All right, look at that. That's space. Okay, see, you bring it in more space, right? Oh, we got red, right? It wants to come in. Different color, different information, different screen, different adaptation. So I'm just showing you how this all works, right? It doesn't look like much when you draw it. But I'm telling you, when you bring it in, it's amazing. You actually see the space. There's the space. Oh, we got an open triangulation door, right? Let's change the correlation into purple. See, over cross line. Right? Let's change the color of some lines again. Let's change it into pink. Oh, it's gone, right? What did we see? Okay. Okay. There you go. Boom, right? Okay, let's go into the line settings, high side location system. What do we got here? White cells. Okay, white cells inside you. I showed you the red, now I'm showing you the white, right? So anything off lines as communication setting sets position lines of red. Okay, right? So, you know, red cells coming in, carriers, lines and locations. You don't want this through attraction. That's what you do not want. You don't want that. Because it carriers and lines of the white cells and overrides the system location and setting. It sets position lines of travels, sets correlating height and rotation system, and then it comes into configuration of change color. And it changes color, changes color, changes color, changes color, changes color, right? So, you know, getting that position lines of travels, you want to always bring it back to where it's supposed to be in travel. Points lines of graph back into the white cells and set positions over cross-line signals of red cells and track location. There you go. Back together, right? So there's so many ways of seeing this, but you got to see it up close. And that's anything that you bring in. You actually bring in the space, right? So it doesn't matter how you see things. It's all about seeing things up close, right? Your scanning system locates to a system of travel. Points lines of graphs, brings everything information locates to a system in all calculations, especially in traction, right? Just looks like an image, right? But when you bring it up close, something different, isn't it? Right? Look at that. Okay. Okay. And then you can add equation lines. Oh, ooh, what's coming in, right? Change the coloration. Okay. Northern lights. Okay. See how that works? Powerful stuff, right? It doesn't look at much when you do this, but when you bring it in, boy, woo-wee, there's the space. And then you have a track line provision lines of cycles in correlation with track interference. Sending line communicates in setting position of its program. You can outline the white line in position location of snowy graph interference. Change the color. All right? Changes the color. You see it here, but you see more when you bring it in. All right? So that's what the team has to get into. Okay? You can do whatever you want, right? But you have to know exactly why you're doing these things and set calculation lines. These are line communication settings, all right? This is process calculation lines in track location. Right? It doesn't look like much, but when you bring it in, you can really see it. See the laser attractions? Right? See the laser attractions, people? See that? Over cross lines of the white cells, the two laser line screens. See? See things up close, people. All right. Yes, solar flare and track center interference over cross line signal location settings. Okay. Now working with that line screen puts everything in tractions. Over line settings, operates lines of surface and track location. Okay. There we go. Look at this. Okay. So you got to see everything from inside you to understand everything, how it all works. Okay. And you can see it on a 4 different angle. Doesn't matter. You can bring in this. See that? Doesn't look like much, right? But if you bring it in really close, whoa. What's going on? Whoa. Whoa, there's the space, right? There's the space, okay? Now it can be anything you want, okay? It's Pluto. It's Pluto, okay? So it can overcross screen, it can direct line signals, it can modify system location of travels, point lines of graphs, and travels. Copy and paste, Pluto, Pluto, right? Cross line side interference, Pluto, Pluto, Pluto. Cross locations. Oh my gosh, look at that. Waving cycles generate the screen lines, adapt face lines, that serve the set location of the position of this program. All coloration is now changed in travel. Okay, see the line strip? You see that? See the line strip around that? That's the outer layer. If you bring it in close, you can really see it. See? You can see it, the outer layer, right? Everything has an inner and outer layer. Yeah, there's a lot of solar flare coming in directions, right? Let's go through the above line cycle. Oh, look at that. See? Purple, red, orange, yellow. Okay, so you don't need to draw. All you got to do is bring it in. There's the space. Okay. Okay, changes the colors. Okay, you can change anything to its color line condition setting. Okay. All right, but you bring it in close. There's the space. All right. So once you understand, things get a lot more easier once you understand your platforms, how to go through that calculation setting, starting off with traction. From this to this to this to walk the platform, so 144, right? Into your crystalline screen, indirect signals modification. All right. It is amazing, isn't it? It's a lot more fun when you get a really understanding, when you see things up close. All right. So you guys have a wonderful day. Talk to you later.